The first thing when installing a locker is to actually get the differential out. Now if you've never put in a differential, then you can skip ahead to, or taken out a differential, then you can skip ahead to where I talk about actually putting it in. But to get the differential out, you take out this bolt, these two bolts, there's one here and there. Take out that bolt right there and be careful not to lose the spacer that goes in between the frame and that. I just have a nut right there because when I had this I didn't have any spacers. And then way down here, right back behind there, is another bolt, and it's a pain in the butt to get to. I don't know why, but that's an Allen head anyway. On my bike you don't have to have an Allen head, you can get it from underneath here, but it's still a complete pain. Then once you do that, the entire differential will slide forward, especially if you have this bracket off. And you can slide this, once it slides forward enough, you can slide this intermediate shaft out of the transfer case and pull it back out of the way. And then I'm not sure, because I can't remember on how you do it on a stock 300, but I think once you do that, you can twist the differential out of the frame and through either the tops of the A-arms or sideways and out through this hole or something, or maybe you have to take off the bottom A-arm. I just don't really remember on that, but you'll figure that much out of it once you do it. Because like I said, I don't even remember. It's been 4 years since I messed with one that had a stock differential in it, and that actually happened to be this one whenever it was completely stock before I put anything in it. As requested, this is a video on how to do a cheap homemade locker. First, what you're going to need is a Honda 300 front differential. It might work on some other Hondas, but I'm not really sure. This isn't even a 300, but it's a 350 Foreman, and it's the same basic differential as far as how it all works. So what you need to do after you get the cases split apart, like so, and it's all split apart, open, just pull the ring gear out. Then take a 12mm socket, take all 6 of these bolts off. Now once you get those 6 12mm bolt heads removed, on a 300, that's it, that's all you gotta do. But on a 350 Foreman, you get 6 more bolts, and you get these weird little Torx bolt things. And then you pull the cover off, and inside is this cap, and then these. These are little cone washers, and I don't really remember what they do, but there's 2 of them on each side. What you need to do to lock this, if you were to put a spool locker in, you would continue taking it apart and get these little clutch packs out of there too, because there's little clutch packs. This is the back side of one right here, and you can see it wiggle. And also don't lose this shim. There's a shim right there, and you can see it turn. But what you need to do to get this to lock is, if you want to trail ride and you just want it to have a little bit better of a locking capability, you see these 2 shims, you get a third one from either a spare differential or just buy 2. They're kind of expensive, I'm sure, but you just buy 2 of them and you put a third one on here. And then that will make a big enough of a difference for you to notice, but you won't have the steering effort of a full locker. And to completely lock it, if you don't want to spend $40 on the spool, because it's pointless to, because it's just not doing you any good whenever you can get it for less. Then if you fully want it locked, like full time, all the time locked, terrible steering, terrible turning radius, you can go to a local hardware store. Tractor Supply usually has these. and you can order them online too, but they're a little bit more expensive. It cost me $4.80 something cents for 4 of them. You only need 2 per differential, but I bought 4. They are Hillman machine bushings, 1.5" by 2 1/4" by 14 gauge thick. And then there's the part number if you need to know the part number too, but generally just the bushings. And you can see they're about so big, and I'm not going to take this out of the package because I don't want to lose it, because I'm bad about losing stuff that's not in packages, even though either way it don't make no sense, but I just lose it. What you do to fully lock it is you take out these cone spacers here, and once you fumble around with them and get them out, you put this underneath it, and you put those back on, and then put your cap with your 6 bolts for if it's just a regular Honda 300, or if it's a 350 Foreman, you put your 6 bolts that have the Torx bits and this little shim, you can't forget that, and then this little Torx bit, and you can bolt the ring gear back on. As for the other side, I don't really think it's necessary to show you because it's the exact same thing. These bolts, on the other hand, these are a special bolt. These are a Torx bit bolt. And this socket is an E10 Craftsman. That's E as in echo, and then 10 the number. And they fit this socket perfectly. You can get by using just a standard 8mm socket and wrench, but it's standard 6-point socket, but you're more likely to round these off, and it's extremely hard to not do it. I've done it successfully twice, but I don't recommend it. Just spend the $5 on the socket, or actually I think it's like $3 on eBay. And then whenever you put this back together, you're either going to want to Loctite it with red Loctite after you've cleaned out every bit of oil, or just straight up spot weld all these in, because these things are known to come loose and destroy differentials. But if you're like me and you don't like welding stuff like this, then I would suggest just getting some red Loctite and cleaning everything perfectly, no oil, nothing, and putting it back together. I did that on my blue 300, and I haven't had any issues yet, and I've got probably 100, maybe 150 actual miles of just running around on trails and everything else, and it seems to still be fine. So once again, the other side, it's the exact same as this. It has these Torx bits. I'm not going to really show you because it's irrelevant, but you have to do both sides. So you have to get 2 of those washers, and there's all the information for them again, and put them on behind the cone spacers. And then once you do that, it's basically not allowing the clutch to slip as much. But if you don't want a full locked ATV where it's difficult to turn, all that crap, just put an extra 3rd cone spacer in between it. And then in your oil or in your grease, because I like to run oil in my grease, actually put oil in it, then I put grease on top of the oil. You're going to want to put some limited slip clutch additive, like some Posi-Track fluid or something, just a little bit of something, so it's not so hard on them clutches, because the way this works is it does slip the clutches whenever it's not locking, and whenever it's under a higher load like that, it will make it slip worse, obviously. This does lock it almost like 99% locked. The steering difference between this and a spool is very, very, very limited. There's almost no difference, but this is just a little bit better. Plus, instead of $40, this is about $3 to get 2 of those versus $40 and waiting a week from your local hardware store. Another thing to note is the steering difference. I'm not going to get into turning radius because this bike doesn't even move, and neither does the other one that has a locked front differential. But this bike actually has a spool locker in it. I'll show you the front tire as I'm pushing as hard as I possibly can with one arm, and you can see that it moves very, very little. Now once you get going, it's not so bad, but to turn, you do have to put your whole weight into one side of the bike and push and pull to get it to do anything, because it's that difficult.